The train whistle pierced the Montana air as Abigail Turner pressed her face against the cool glass of the window, watching the vast landscape unfold before her eyes. The year was 1883, and at 22 years old, she was traveling to a new life with nothing but a weathered carpetbag containing her few possessions and a letter from a man she'd never met. The rhythmic clacking of the train wheels seemed to echo her racing heartbeat as she clutched the wrinkled paper in her trembling hands. "Next stop, Whispering Pines," called the conductor, making his way through the passenger car. Abigail smoothed her plain cotton dress, wishing for the 100th time that she had something finer to wear to meet her future husband. After her parents' deaths from influenza last winter, the small inheritance they'd left had been quickly depleted by medical bills and funeral costs. With no family left in Boston and faced with destitution, she had answered an advertisement in the newspaper. "Respectable gentleman of means seeks bride. Must be of good character. Passage paid." The letters exchanged with Mr. Harold Thornton had been brief but promising. He had described himself as a successful businessman with a fine house in the growing town of Whispering Pines, Montana Territory. When he'd sent the train ticket, Abigail had packed her meager belongings, sold what little remained of her parents' possessions, and set out west with hopes of a fresh start. As the train slowed into the station, Abigail gathered her carpetbag and small purse. Her stomach knotted with anxiety as she stepped onto the wooden platform. The frontier town was smaller than she had imagined, a dusty main street lined with wooden buildings, horses tied to hitching posts, and people moving about their business under the warm summer sun. She scanned the faces of those waiting at the station, looking for someone who might be Mr. Thornton. A portly man in an expensive suit approached her, his expression shifting from expectancy to poorly disguised disappointment as he looked her over. "Miss Turner?" he asked, removing his hat. "Yes, Mr. Thornton?" Abigail replied with a hesitant smile. "Indeed." He cleared his throat, keeping his distance. "I must say your letters did not fully communicate your circumstances." Abigail's face flushed. "I'm afraid I don't understand, sir." Harold Thornton's gaze flickered over her plain dress, worn boots, and simple carpetbag. "You indicated you were from a respectable Boston family." I was. My parents were teachers before their passing last year." "Teachers." He pronounced the word as though it left a bad taste in his mouth. "And you brought with you?" He gestured vaguely at her bag. "Just my personal belongings, sir. Books, clothing, some mementos of my parents." Mr. Thornton's face hardened. "Miss Turner, I was expecting a woman of means, someone who could contribute to my household and business interests. I have a position to maintain in this community." The reality of her situation dawned on Abigail with crushing clarity. "You wanted a wealthy bride. I wanted a partner befitting my station," he replied stiffly. "Not a charity case." Tears threatened, but Abigail fought them back. "I assure you, Mr. Thornton, I am no charity case. I am educated and willing to work." "That won't be necessary," he interrupted, already putting his hat back on. "I'm afraid there has been a misunderstanding. I cannot proceed with our arrangement." But Abigail's voice caught. "The return fare. I have nowhere to go." Thornton sighed heavily, reaching into his waistcoat pocket. He extracted a few bills and thrust them toward her. "This should cover a night at the boarding house and passage to the next town. I suggest you find employment there or continue on to California. Good day, Miss Turner." He turned and walked away without another glance, leaving Abigail standing alone on the platform, the money clutched in her shaking hand. The few other passengers had dispersed, and the station was nearly empty now. The enormity of her situation crashed down upon her alone in a strange town, thousands of miles from home, with barely enough money for a few days' lodging. Fighting back tears, Abigail picked up her carpetbag and started walking toward the main street. She would need to find the boarding house and then figure out what to do next. As she reached the end of the platform, she stumbled on a loose board, her ankle twisting painfully as her bag tumbled to the ground, spilling some of its contents into the dust. "Steady there, miss," came a deep voice as strong hands caught her arm, preventing her fall. Abigail looked up into the face of a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and the clearest blue eyes she had ever seen. He wore a dusty cowboy hat, a simple cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up revealing muscular forearms, denim pants, and well-worn boots. Unlike Mr. Thornton's disdainful gaze, this man's eyes held nothing but genuine concern. "Thank you," she managed, mortified by the situation. "Let me help you with your things," he said, kneeling to gather the scattered items: a few books, a hairbrush, a small wooden box, and a framed photograph of her parents. "You're very kind, but I can manage," Abigail insisted, even as her voice betrayed her distress. The man handed her the photograph, which she quickly tucked back into the bag. "I'm Elijah Wade," he introduced himself, tipping his hat slightly. "Most folks just call me Eli." "Abigail Turner," she replied, accepting her hairbrush from his outstretched hand. "You just arrived on the train?" he asked, though it was obvious. "Yes." She hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal to this stranger. Eli glanced in the direction Thornton had departed, his expression thoughtful. "Was that Harold Thornton I saw speaking with you?" Abigail's cheeks burned with humiliation. "Yes, I came as his mail-order bride, but there was a misunderstanding." Eli's face darkened. "Thornton has a reputation for particular tastes. I'm guessing he found you lacking in some way?" "In funds, primarily," Abigail admitted, surprising herself with her candor. "Apparently, my worth is measured by the size of my purse, which is regrettably small." Eli's mouth quirked in a sympathetic half-smile. "Thornton's a fool, then. A person's worth isn't found in their pocketbook." A heaviness settled in Abigail's chest. "Unfortunately, it seems my immediate prospects depend on precisely that." Eli studied her for a moment, then asked, "Do you have somewhere to stay?" "Mr. Thornton suggested the boarding house," she replied, gesturing vaguely down the street. "Mrs. Wilcox's place. It's decent enough, but—" Eli hesitated. "Look, Miss Turner, I don't mean to pry, but Whispering Pines isn't the easiest place for a woman alone. Do you have any plans?" Abigail straightened her shoulders. "I need to find work. I'm educated. I can teach, keep accounts, or work as a shop assistant." Eli nodded thoughtfully. "Teaching positions are scarce here, but—" he seemed to consider something. "My sister-in-law, Rebecca, runs the general store. She's been looking for help since she's expecting a baby soon. It's not much, but it might be a start." Hope flickered in Abigail's chest. "That would be wonderful. The store's just down the street. I can take you there now if you'd like," Eli offered. "Rebecca can point you toward Mrs. Wilcox's afterward." "I don't want to impose. It's no imposition," Eli assured her, reaching for her carpetbag. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Abigail nodded, allowing him to carry her bag. They walked together down the dusty main street, Abigail taking in the sights of her new surroundings: the general store, a saloon, a small church, various shops, and what appeared to be a sheriff's office. "Have you lived here long, Mr. Wade?" she asked, trying to distract herself from the stares of townspeople curious about the newcomer. "All my life," Eli replied. "My father started a cattle ranch about 5 miles outside of town. My older brother Adam and I run it now, after Pa passed a few years back." "I'm sorry for your loss." Eli nodded in acknowledgement. "Adam married Rebecca 4 years ago. I live in a cabin on the ranch property. They reached a 2-story wooden building with a sign reading, Wade General Merchandise. Eli held the door open for Abigail, and they entered a well-stocked store with shelves of dry goods, tools, fabric, and other necessities. A pretty woman with auburn hair tied back in a practical bun stood behind the counter, her rounded belly making her condition evident. "Rebecca," Eli called. "Got someone here you might want to meet." Rebecca Wade looked up with a warm smile that immediately put Abigail at ease. "Hello there. New to town. This is Miss Abigail Turner," Eli explained. "She just arrived from Boston and is looking for work. Thought you might be able to help each other out." Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes as she glanced between Abigail and Eli. "Harold Thornton was at the station earlier," she said quietly. Abigail's face fell. "News travels fast." "Small towns," Rebecca said with an apologetic smile. "But never mind that. Eli's right, I do need help, especially with the baby coming in a couple of months. Do you have experience in a shop?" "Not specifically," Abigail admitted, "but I'm a quick learner. I can read and write well, and I'm good with figures." Rebecca's face brightened. "That's actually perfect. The bookkeeping is what I struggle with most. Adam tries to help, but with the ranch." "I could start right away," Abigail offered eagerly. "Wonderful." Rebecca came around the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "We can't offer much in wages to start, but there's a room above the store you're welcome to use. Previous shop girls have stayed there." Abigail could hardly believe her good fortune. "That's more than generous, Mrs. Wade." "Rebecca, please," she insisted. "And it's not charity, we genuinely need the help." She glanced at her brother-in-law with appreciation. "Trust Eli to find exactly what we needed." Eli shifted, seeming slightly embarrassed by the praise. "Just happened to be at the station at the right time." "Providence, I'd say," Rebecca replied with a knowing smile. She turned back to Abigail. "Would you like to see the room? It's simple but clean." "Yes, thank you." As Rebecca led the way to a staircase at the back of the store, Eli set down Abigail's bag. "I should get back to the ranch. Adam will be wondering where I've gotten to." "Mr. Wade," Abigail called, turning back. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need for thanks, Miss Turner. And it's just Eli." His blue eyes met hers with unexpected warmth. "Welcome to Whispering Pines." With that, he tipped his hat and departed, leaving Abigail with the strange sensation that despite the day's earlier humiliation, something important had just begun. The room above the general store was indeed simple: a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a rocking chair near the window that overlooked the main street. To Abigail, after days on the train and the crushing disappointment at the station, it looked like paradise. "It's perfect," she told Rebecca sincerely. "I can't thank you enough." "You can thank me by helping with the store," Rebecca replied with a smile. "The baby makes me tired in the afternoons, and Adam worries I'm doing too much." "When is the baby due?" "Late September, the doctor thinks." Rebecca rested a hand on her belly. "Our first." Adam's beside himself with excitement. Abigail smiled, pushing away the fleeting sadness at the reminder of the family life she had hoped to build with Mr. Thornton, however pragmatic the arrangement might have been. "I'll do everything I can to help." "I'm sure you will." Rebecca headed for the door. "Rest tonight. We can start your training tomorrow morning. The store opens at 8. Once alone, Abigail unpacked her meager belongings, arranging her books on the dresser top and placing the photograph of her parents beside the bed. She changed out of her travel-worn dress into her nightgown, washed her face and hands in the basin, and brushed out her long chestnut hair. Sitting in the rocking chair by the window, she watched as the sunset painted the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The town was quieting for the evening, though the saloon across the street was coming to life with piano music and boisterous voices. Despite the day's tumultuous beginning, Abigail felt an unexpected sense of peace. She had a roof over her head and the promise of work. She offered a silent prayer of gratitude, especially for the kindness of the Wade family. As her thoughts drifted to Eli's blue eyes and his statement about a person's worth not being in their pocketbook, Abigail smiled to herself. Perhaps Whispering Pines would offer the fresh start she needed after all. The following weeks established a rhythm to Abigail's new life. She woke early each morning, dressed in one of her 3 serviceable dresses, and helped Rebecca open the store. The work was more varied than she had anticipated, tallying orders, restocking shelves, measuring fabric for the ladies of the town, and keeping the account books meticulously organized. To her surprise, Abigail discovered she had a talent for retail. Her natural warmth and Boston manners charmed the customers, and her efficiency in managing the store's business impressed Rebecca. By the end of her first month, Rebecca had increased her wages and insisted she take Sundays off to attend church and have some leisure time. "You're a godsend," Rebecca told her one afternoon as they sorted a new shipment of goods. "The store hasn't run this smoothly in years." Abigail smiled, pleased by the praise. "I enjoy the work, and everyone has been so welcoming." It was true after initial curiosity about the jilted mail-order bride. The townspeople had accepted her presence with remarkable ease. "Most everyone," Rebecca corrected with a frown. "Harold Thornton and his circle still give you the cold shoulder whenever they come in." Abigail shrugged, though the memory of her rejection still stung. "Mr. Thornton made his opinion of my worth quite clear. I don't expect that to change." "His loss," Rebecca declared loyally. "And speaking of people who see your worth." She nodded toward the front window, where Eli Wade was dismounting from his horse. Abigail felt her cheeks warm. Since her arrival, Eli had made a habit of stopping by the store whenever he came into town for supplies, which seemed to be more frequently than Rebecca claimed was his usual pattern. Their conversations had evolved from polite small talk to genuine exchanges about books they'd read, their backgrounds, and their views on everything from politics to proper pie crust techniques. "He's just being neighborly," Abigail insisted, though her heart quickened as the bell above the door announced his entrance. Rebecca gave her a knowing look but said nothing as Eli removed his hat and approached the counter. "Ladies," he greeted them with a smile that seemed to brighten particularly when his gaze landed on Abigail. "How's business today?" "Steady," Rebecca replied. "What brings you to town this time, brother? Forgot something from your list 3 days ago." Eli's ears reddened slightly. "Adam needed me to post a letter to that cattle buyer in Helena." "Did he now?" Rebecca's tone was innocent, but her eyes danced with amusement. "And it couldn't wait for your regular Saturday trip?" "Rebecca," Eli warned, clearly embarrassed. Taking pity on him, Abigail intervened. "We just received a shipment of those leatherwork gloves you mentioned needing. Would you like to see them?" "Yes, thank you," Eli replied with obvious relief. As Abigail led him to the display, Rebecca called out, "I need to rest my feet for a bit. Abigail, you can handle things down here." Before Abigail could respond, Rebecca had disappeared up the stairs to the living quarters she shared with Adam above the store's back storeroom, leaving her alone with Eli. "Your sister-in-law is not particularly subtle," Abigail observed with a small laugh. Eli chuckled, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "Adam says pregnancy has made her even more determined to meddle in my affairs." "And what affairs would those be?" Abigail asked, immediately regretting the forward question. But Eli didn't seem to mind. He examined the gloves, testing the leather between his fingers. "She thinks I need a wife." "Oh!" Abigail busied herself rearranging the gloves, unsure how to respond. "She may have a point," Eli continued, his voice casual though Abigail sensed an undercurrent of tension. The cabin gets mighty quiet some evenings. Abigail looked up, meeting his gaze. I would have thought a hard-working rancher would appreciate the quiet. Some quiet is good, Eli agreed. Too much makes a man think too hard about what he's missing. The air between them seemed to thicken. Abigail's throat felt dry. These gloves are $2, she said, retreating to the safety of business. Eli seemed to understand her need to step back. He nodded, selecting a pair. I'll take them, and some coffee beans if you have them. Abigail gathered his purchases, wrapping them in brown paper. As she tallied the cost, Eli asked, Have you seen much of the area since you arrived? Just the town, she admitted. I haven't had much opportunity to explore further. Would you? Eli cleared his throat. That is, if you're free this Sunday after church, I'd be pleased to show you some of the countryside. Weather permitting, of course. Abigail's heart fluttered. Like a tour. Like a picnic, Eli suggested, his gaze steady despite the hint of uncertainty in his voice. If that would be agreeable to you. The proper Boston lady in Abigail knew she should demur, or at least request Rebecca accompany them as a chaperone. But the new Abigail, the one who had traveled across the country alone and was building a life for herself, found herself nodding. I would like that very much, she replied softly. Eli's answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the Montana plains. I'll call for you at noon then. After he paid and left, Abigail stood at the counter, her emotions a mixture of excitement and trepidation. When Rebecca returned, trying and failing to look innocent, Abigail fixed her with a mock-stern look. You planned that, she accused. Rebecca laughed, patting her rounded belly. I may have given Providence a little nudge. Did he finally work up the courage to ask you to go riding with him? A picnic, Abigail corrected, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. Well, it's about time, Rebecca declared. He's been finding excuses to come to town ever since you arrived. Adam's been teasing him mercilessly about it. Abigail bit her lip. Do you think it's too soon? After Mr. Thornton, I mean. Rebecca's expression softened. Abigail, you came here expecting to marry a stranger. I don't think getting to know Eli over a picnic is rushing things. She squeezed Abigail's hand. Besides, there wasn't anything real with Thornton to get over. You deserve a chance at something genuine. The words echoed in Abigail's mind that night as she prepared for bed. Something genuine. She had come west prepared to enter a marriage of convenience, hoping affection might grow in time. But the way her pulse quickened when Eli entered a room, the easy conversation between them, the genuine interest he took in her thoughts and feelings, this was something altogether different. It both thrilled and terrified her. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that kept the summer heat bearable. Abigail wore her best dress, a cornflower blue cotton that brought out the warm highlights in her hair, which she wore partially up, with soft curls framing her face. Church service provided the usual opportunity for socializing with the townspeople, though Abigail was acutely aware of Eli sitting with Adam and Rebecca several pews ahead. When their eyes met briefly during a hymn, the warmth in his gaze made her fumble the words. After the service, as people gathered outside to chat, Harold Thornton and his sister Eugenia pointedly turned their backs when Abigail approached their circle of friends. The snub shouldn't have hurt after so many weeks, but Abigail felt the sting nonetheless. Don't mind them, came a voice at her elbow. Eli had appeared beside her, looking handsome in his Sunday clothes, a clean white shirt, dark vest, and his best denim pants. Thornton still sore that his fancy Boston bride turned out to prefer honest work to his money. I didn't prefer it, Abigail corrected quietly. He rejected me, remember? Eli's expression darkened. And demonstrates his poor judgment daily. Are you still up for our picnic? Yes, of course. Abigail's spirits lifted instantly. I just need to change into something more suitable for riding. I'll fetch the wagon and meet you at the store in half an hour, Eli said, tipping his hat before striding away. True to his word, Eli arrived with a small wagon pulled by two well-groomed horses. In the back was a picnic basket, a blanket, and what looked like fishing poles. I thought we might try our luck at the creek, he explained as he helped Abigail up onto the seat. If you're amenable to a bit of fishing. I've never been fishing, Abigail admitted. Eli looked scandalized. Never? Well, that settles it. You can't live in Montana without knowing how to fish. As they drove out of town, Abigail felt a curious mix of freedom and nervousness. This was the farthest she'd been from Whispering Pines since her arrival, and being alone with Eli, however innocent, the outing brought a flutter to her stomach that had nothing to do with the bumpy road. The landscape opened up before them, rolling grasslands dotted with wildflowers, the distant mountains a purple haze on the horizon. Eli pointed out landmarks and told stories of growing up on the ranch, his deep voice painting pictures of cattle drives and winter storms, of his father's strength and his mother's gentle wisdom before her early death from pneumonia when Eli was just 14. It must have been hard losing her so young, Abigail said softly, thinking of her own recent loss. It was, Eli acknowledged. Pa did his best, but there was a softness missing from our lives after she was gone. Adam found that again with Rebecca. He glanced at Abigail. I know it's different, but I understand something of what you've been through. Losing your parents. The simple acknowledgement of her grief touched Abigail deeply. Thank you. Most people don't know what to say, so they say nothing. Sometimes there's nothing to say that helps, Eli replied. But there's always understanding to offer. They reached a pretty spot where a creek meandered through a stand of cottonwood trees. Eli helped Abigail down from the wagon, his hands strong and warm at her waist. He spread the blanket in a shady spot and set out the picnic. Rebecca had prepared fried chicken, biscuits, apple pie, and a jar of lemonade. After they ate, Eli taught Abigail the basics of fishing, standing close behind her to demonstrate how to cast the line. The nearness of him, the scent of soap and sunshine on his skin, made it hard for Abigail to concentrate on his instructions. You have to be patient, he murmured, his breath stirring the hair near her ear. Let the fish come to you. They settled on the bank, lines in the water, talking quietly about books they'd read and places they'd like to see. Eli had never been further east than St. Louis, while Abigail had never seen the ocean west of Boston. I'd like to see California someday, Eli confessed. The giant redwood trees, the ocean. They say it's different from the Atlantic. All that way just to see trees and water? Abigail teased. It's not about the destination, Eli replied, his eyes meeting hers. It's about who you're traveling with. The air between them seemed to still. Abigail felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by something inexplicable yet powerful. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Then her fishing pole jerked violently. You've got one, Eli exclaimed, the moment broken. Quick, start reeling it in. With his guidance, Abigail landed a respectable-sized trout, laughing in delight at her success. Eli showed her how to remove the hook and then released the fish back into the creek. I thought we'd eat it, Abigail said, surprised. We could have, Eli agreed. But sometimes the joy is in the catching, not the keeping. As the afternoon waned, they packed up the picnic and fishing gear. The return journey to town was filled with comfortable conversation and occasional companionable silences. When they reached the general store, Eli helped Abigail down from the wagon, holding her hands a moment longer than necessary. I enjoyed today, he said, his expression earnest. Very much. So did I, Abigail replied, meaning it wholeheartedly. Perhaps. Eli hesitated. Perhaps we could do this again sometime? I'd like that. He smiled, releasing her hands reluctantly. Good night, Abigail. Good night, Eli. As she watched him drive away, Abigail knew something fundamental had shifted between them. What had begun as gratitude for his kindness was blossoming into something deeper, something that both thrilled and terrified her. After the disappointment with Mr. Thornton, she had promised herself to be practical about her future, to focus on independence rather than romantic notions. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, Abigail admitted to herself that practicality was becoming increasingly difficult where Elijah Wade was concerned. The summer progressed with a rhythm all its own. Abigail's role at the general store expanded as Rebecca's pregnancy advanced, leaving her with more responsibility and, to her delight, more independence. The picnic with Eli led to other outings, a community dance where he proved surprisingly light on his feet, Sunday rides to explore the countryside, and quiet evenings on the store's back porch, talking as the stars emerged above. With each meeting, Abigail felt herself falling deeper into feelings she had never experienced before. Eli was unlike any man she had known in Boston, straightforward yet thoughtful, strong yet gentle, practical yet dreaming. He treated her with a respect that acknowledged her intelligence and independence while still making her feel cherished and protected. By late August, Abigail knew she was in love with him, though neither had spoken of their feelings directly. Their courtship, for she had come to think of it as such, progressed with a deliberate pace that respected the conventions of propriety while allowing them to truly know one another. The town, of course, noticed. Most viewed the developing relationship with approval, especially since Abigail had proven herself a valuable addition to the community. She had started a small reading circle for the town's women, helped organize a successful harvest festival, and even occasionally assisted the schoolteacher with advanced students. Only Harold Thornton and his social circle maintained their cool distance, though Abigail had ceased to care much about their opinion. Her life was full in ways she had never anticipated when she'd stepped off that train months earlier. Everything changed on a warm September afternoon. Abigail was alone in the store, Rebecca having gone upstairs for her daily rest, when the door burst open and Adam Wade rushed in, his face pale with urgency. "It's the baby," he said without preamble. "Rebecca's time has come early. I've sent for the doctor, but he's out at the Johnson farm delivering their child." Abigail's heart raced. "What can I do?" "Stay with her while I find the midwife," Adam replied, already heading for the stairs. "She's asking for you." Upstairs, Abigail found Rebecca pacing the bedroom, one hand pressed to her lower back, the other cradling her belly. Her face was flushed, her hair damp with perspiration. "Thank goodness," Rebecca breathed when she saw Abigail. "It's happening so fast. The pains started just after lunch." "Why didn't you say anything?" Abigail asked, helping her friend to the bed. "I thought they were just practice pains. The doctor said first babies usually take their time." Rebecca grimaced as another contraction gripped her. "This one seems to have other ideas." Adam returned shortly with Mrs. Peterson, the town's experienced midwife, who took charge with calm efficiency. She examined Rebecca and announced that the baby was indeed coming quickly. "The men should wait downstairs," she declared. "Miss Turner, if you've the stomach for it, I could use your help." Adam kissed his wife's forehead, his face a mask of worry and excitement. "I'll close the store and send word to Eli. You're in good hands, my love." What followed was the most intense and miraculous experience of Abigail's life. For hours, she helped the midwife, supporting Rebecca through increasingly powerful contractions, wiping her brow, offering water, and providing encouragement when Rebecca's strength seemed to flag. "You can do this," Abigail assured her friend as the labor reached its peak. "You're the strongest woman I know." As the sun set, casting long shadows through the bedroom window, Rebecca gave a final, tremendous push, and her daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to Abigail's eyes. "A girl, Mrs. Peterson announced, quickly cleaning and swaddling the infant before placing her in Rebecca's trembling arms. A beautiful, healthy girl. The look of wonder and love on Rebecca's face as she gazed at her daughter struck Abigail to her core. This was what life was truly about, not wealth or status, but love and the miracle of family. When Adam was called up to meet his daughter, his expression of reverent joy completed the perfect tableau. Abigail slipped quietly from the room, giving the new family privacy for their first moments together. Downstairs, she found Eli pacing the store floor, his face etched with concern. "A girl," Abigail announced, her voice thick with emotion. "Mother and baby are both well." Eli's face transformed with relief and joy. "Thank God," he breathed, crossing to Abigail and, without hesitation, pulling her into a tight embrace. Abigail melted into his arms, the emotional intensity of the day catching up with her. They stood like that for a long moment, his strong arms around her, her face pressed against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. When they finally drew apart, Eli looked down at her with an expression that stole her breath. "You're amazing," he said softly. "Adam said you were right there helping Rebecca through it all." "I only did what needed doing," Abigail demurred, though she felt a flush of pride at his praise. "That's just it," Eli said, his hands still resting lightly on her waist. "You always do what needs doing, without complaint or expectation of reward. You came here with nothing but your courage and determination, and you've built a place for yourself through sheer grit and goodness." His words touched something deep inside her, a wound that had been healing slowly since her rejection by Harold Thornton. "I'm not special, Eli. I just adapt." "You are special," he insisted. "To the town, to Rebecca and Adam, to their daughter, who'll grow up with you as her aunt." He paused, his blue eyes intense. "To me," the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Abigail's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Eli," she began, unsure what she wanted to say. He took a deep breath. "Abigail, I've been trying to find the right moment, the perfect words. But watching you today, seeing your strength and compassion, I can't wait any longer." He took her hands in his. "I love you. I think I've loved you since that first day at the train station when you stood there with your chin up despite having your heart broken." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. "I wasn't broken-hearted then," she whispered. "I was just rejected." "Then Thornton's an even bigger fool than I thought," Eli replied, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. "Because any man with sense would see what I see, a woman rich in everything that matters. Rich in courage, in kindness, in intelligence. Rich in love. Rich in love," Abigail repeated, the words warming her from within. "That's worth more than all the money in Montana Territory," Eli continued. "And I'd be the richest man alive if you'd consider becoming my wife." The proposal, so earnest and heartfelt, left Abigail momentarily speechless. When she'd come west as a mail-order bride, she'd expected at best a practical partnership. She'd never dared hope for this, a man who valued her for herself, who saw her worth beyond material possessions or social standing. "Yes," she finally managed, her voice clear despite her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you, Eli." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a gentle, reverent kiss that promised a lifetime of respect and devotion. When they parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have much to offer in worldly goods," he said quietly. "The ranch does well enough, but my cabin is small, and life out there isn't easy." "I don't need easy," Abigail replied. "I need real. And you, Elijah Wade, are the most real man I've ever known." They were interrupted by Adam calling down the stairs, inviting them up to meet the newest Wade. Hand in hand, they climbed to the bedroom, where Rebecca sat propped against pillows, cradling her daughter. "Abigail," Rebecca greeted her with a tired smile. "Come meet your niece." As Abigail took the tiny bundle in her arms, she felt Eli's hand warm on her back. The baby blinked up at her with unfocused eyes, tiny fingers curling around Abigail's offered finger. "We've decided to name her Abigail Rose," Adam announced. "After the two women who mean so much to our family, my mother, Rose, and you, Abigail." Tears threatened again as Abigail looked up in surprise. "Me? But I'm not family. You will be," Rebecca said, her knowing gaze moving between Abigail and Eli. "Unless I'm very much mistaken." Eli cleared his throat, his arm sliding around Abigail's waist. "If you're referring to the fact that I've asked Abigail to marry me and she's agreed, then no, you're not mistaken." The joy and approval on Adam and Rebecca's faces confirmed what Abigail already knew: she had found not just love but a family and a home. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. With Rebecca needing time to recover and care for baby Abigail Rose, the store's management fell almost entirely to Abigail. Eli rode into town daily, ostensibly to check on his brother's family, but spending most of his time helping Abigail with the heavier tasks around the store while they planned their future together. The town buzzed with news of their engagement. Most reactions were positive, with many townspeople stopping by to offer congratulations. Mrs. Peterson, the midwife, brought a hand-stitched quilt as an early wedding gift. The pastor's wife organized a small party at the church to celebrate. Only the Thornton contingent remained aloof, though Abigail occasionally caught Harold watching her with an expression that seemed more confused than contemptuous, as if he couldn't quite comprehend how the penniless woman he had rejected had found happiness without his approval or assistance. Eli and Abigail decided on an October wedding, when the autumn colors would be at their peak and the ranch work would allow for a brief honeymoon trip to Helena. In the meantime, Eli worked to expand his cabin, adding a proper bedroom and enlarging the main living area to make it more comfortable for married life. "It won't be what you were accustomed to in Boston," he warned one evening as they sat on the store's porch swing, his arm around her shoulders. "Eli," Abigail said patiently, "I lived in a modest home there, and for the past months, I've been quite content in a single room above a general store. Your cabin will feel like a palace as long as we're together." He kissed her temple, his voice rough with emotion. "How did I get so lucky?" "As I recall, you were in the right place at the right time," Abigail replied lightly. "Providence, as Rebecca would say." The day before their wedding, an unexpected visitor came to the store. Abigail was arranging a display of fall preserves when she looked up to find Harold Thornton standing awkwardly by the counter, hat in hand. "Mr. Thornton," she greeted him with polite surprise. "How may I help you today?" He cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Turner, I understand congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Abigail replied, unsure where this conversation was heading. He hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. "I owe you an apology, Miss Turner. My behavior upon your arrival was less than gentlemanly." Abigail was stunned into momentary silence. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's the truth," he insisted. "I had certain expectations that blinded me to qualities that matter more than financial assets." He glanced around the well-organized store. "You've proven yourself a valuable addition to this community, and Wade is a fortunate man." The grudging compliment surprised a small smile from Abigail. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I appreciate your candor." He nodded stiffly, then reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small package wrapped in fine paper. "A wedding gift. Nothing extravagant, just a token of my esteem and best wishes for your future." Abigail accepted the package with murmured thanks, watching as Thornton replaced his hat and departed as abruptly as he had arrived. Opening the gift, she found a beautiful silver bookmark engraved with her initials, or rather, what would soon be her initials. A.W. The gesture, unexpected but sincere, felt like the closing of a chapter. Harold Thornton had rejected her based on her lack of material wealth, but in doing so, he had unwittingly opened the door to a life far richer than anything she might have found as his wife. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the aspens around Whispering Pines a blaze of gold against the deep blue October sky. The ceremony was held in the small church, filled to capacity with townspeople and ranchers from the surrounding area. Rebecca, recovered from childbirth, stood as Abigail's matron of honor, while Adam served as his brother's best man. Little Abigail rose sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. Abigail wore a dress of ivory satin that Rebecca had helped her make, with lace from her mother's wedding gown incorporated into the collar and cuffs. As she walked down the aisle on the arm of the elderly shopkeeper who had offered to give her away, her eyes were fixed on Eli waiting at the altar, his expression of wonder and love making her feel like the wealthiest woman in the world. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken in voices that carried clearly through the hushed church. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Eli's kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration afterwards spilled out onto the church grounds, with tables laden with food contributed by every family in town. There was dancing to fiddle music, laughter, and so many well wishes that Abigail's cheeks ached from smiling. As evening approached, the couple prepared to depart for the ranch, where they would spend the night before beginning their journey to Helena the next morning. Eli helped Abigail into the wagon, which had been decorated with ribbons and flowers by the town's children. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Wade?" he asked, his voice rich with promise. "More than ready, Mr. Wade," she replied, her heart full to bursting. As they drove away amid cheers and waving handkerchiefs, Abigail looked back at the town that had become her home. She thought of the frightened, rejected woman who had stood alone on the train platform just months ago, and marveled at how completely her life had transformed. The cabin, when they reached it after the short drive, was transformed as well. Eli had added curtains at the windows, a new rocking chair by the fireplace, and fresh wildflowers in a jar on the table. A wedding quilt from his mother's hope chest adorned the bed in the new bedroom. "Welcome home," he said simply, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Abigail's head resting on Eli's chest, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come west seeking security, prepared to marry a stranger for the sake of survival. Instead, she had found independence, community, family, and a love deeper than anything she could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Eli murmured, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "About wealth," she replied. "About what it truly means to be rich." He chuckled softly. "And what conclusions have you reached, Mrs. Wade?" Abigail raised herself on one elbow to look into the face of the man who had seen her worth when she had nothing material to offer. "That you were right that day at the station. A person's worth isn't found in their pocketbook." "The wisest thing I've ever said," Eli agreed, pulling her closer. "And that being rich in love," Abigail continued, "is the only wealth that truly matters." As Eli kissed her, Abigail knew with absolute certainty that by that measure, she was the richest woman in all of Montana Territory. The years that followed proved the truth of that conviction. The Wade Ranch prospered under Eli and Adam's management, expanding gradually as they acquired additional grazing land. Abigail continued to help at the general store when needed, but increasingly found her attention devoted to their growing family. Their first child, a son they named William after Eli's father, arrived a year after their wedding. A daughter, Elizabeth, followed 2 years later, and another son, James, 2 years after that. The cabin expanded accordingly, with Eli adding rooms as their family grew, until it became a proper farmhouse with a wide porch where the children played and Abigail rocked in the evening, watching the sunset while Eli finished his chores. Abigail also found ways to contribute to the wider community. Drawing on her education, she established a small lending library in a corner of the general store, eventually campaigning successfully for a proper town library. During winter months, she taught advanced classes for older students, introducing many young people of Whispering Pines to literature and mathematics beyond the basic curriculum. Harold Thornton, perhaps influenced by Abigail's example, gradually softened his rigid social views. He eventually married a widow from Helena who brought little money but considerable intelligence and charm to the match. Over time, the Thorntons and the Wades developed, if not a friendship, at least a cordial relationship based on mutual respect. Rebecca and Adam's family grew as well, with 2 boys joining little Abigail Rose. The cousins grew up almost as siblings, spending summers running wild on the ranch and winters sledding on the hills behind the Wade homestead. The brothers' partnership remained strong, the ranch and store providing security for both families. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Eli surprised Abigail with a trip to California, fulfilling the dream they had discussed on their first picnic. They stood together beneath the towering redwoods, hands clasped, awed by the majesty of trees that had stood for centuries. "They've seen so much history," Abigail marveled, her neck craned to see the distant tops. "So many lives come and go. And they'll see so much more after we're gone," Eli replied, his arm around her waist. "Just like the ranch, I hope. Something we built that will outlast us." "The ranch, the children, the library," Abigail agreed. "Our legacy. You know what I'm most proud of, though?" Eli asked, turning to face her. At 40, he was still handsome, his face weathered by sun and wind, his blue eyes as clear and honest as the day they'd met. "What's that?" "Us." He brushed a strand of hair now streaked with a few threads of silver from her face. "What we've built together. Not just the tangible things, but this love that's grown stronger every year." Abigail smiled, thinking of the frightened young woman who had stepped off that train, of the disappointment and rejection that had seemed so devastating at the time. How grateful she was now for Harold Thornton's shallow judgment, for the twist of fate that had placed Eli Wade at the station that day. "Rich in love," she said softly, echoing the words that had changed her life. "It's all that really matters, isn't it? All that ever has," Eli agreed, gathering her close. "All that ever will." As they stood together beneath the ancient trees, Abigail knew with absolute certainty that no fortune in the world could equal the wealth she had found in Whispering Pines, not in gold or property or social standing, but in the enduring love of a good man, the joy of their children, and the life they had built together on nothing more than courage, hard work, and hearts open to possibility. She had arrived as a mail-order bride, been rejected for being poor, but found a cowboy who recognized that being rich in love was the only wealth that truly mattered. And in that, Abigail Wade had found a fortune beyond measure.